Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's Joel Beya, and I am joined with David Ornstein for this week's episode of The Five Insider. Now, before we go into the episode, I want to let you guys know that after you finish watching this video, not during, not before, but after, please make sure you check out the Joe Cole interview we did with myself, Rio, and Steve. Amazing interview, great insight. It's worth watching.
Who was the biggest influence in terms of managers on your career, do you think? Why?
It's got to be Jose, really. Like, he sort of lit a fire. I don't know, lit a fire inside of me that sort of, it went, right, I need to start winning things, because I got scared. I thought, I'm not going to win nothing in my career.
Now, we know that Chelsea and Liverpool is postponed tomorrow, but we still wanted to take a look at some of the topics involving Todd Boehly and, of course, Jurgen Klopp. Make sure you enjoy. Peace. Yes, guys, it's Joel Bear, and I'm back today on the Five Insider with the one and only Mr. David Ornstein, giving us his insight, his view, and of course, his expertise. Okay, let's get it cracking. Jurgen Klopp. Now, it's a bit of a weird one, but I thought, let me keep this topic for when I speak to David. There's been loads of reports, saying we know that he's extended his time at Liverpool. Last year he spoke about him and his wife. They looked and they said, they didn't see themselves leaving when they had originally said. But there's been a lot of questions about his rebuilding process. They've said that he's never stayed somewhere long enough to rebuild twice. Then there were stats that I saw across the internet that was saying that he's been at clubs for 7 years max, and there's all this kind of stuff that there's doubts on Jurgen Klopp's name, which, to be honest with you, I think is ludicrous. I think he is a top manager. I think everyone has this wobble. I remember when Sir Alex would sometimes refreshing his teams, you would see sometimes that they might have a year or so. There was one year where Liverpool finished above United. I think Liverpool finished second or something like that. United finished either third or fourth. I can't remember. So you will have those times when Jose Mourinho first came in and, 03, 04, and they were transitioning. And, after the Invincibles, they weren't winning leagues for a while consistently. And that happens, even you see with Arsene Wenger, he had to rebuild the team after, Wrighty's team, after the Anelka team. Do you think we're going to be here long enough to see Jurgen Klopp build a second dynasty of Liverpool Football Club?
Well, Jurgen Klopp is one of the best managers football has ever seen. And I don't say that lightly. I think you can see it in what he's achieved, his style of play, the spirit and loyalty he engenders from players and staff, the reputation he's building, the charisma, the style of play, the players he's developed. He ticks every box, but that doesn't mean he's perfect. Every manager's got their faults. And in terms of the last few years, it was really difficult for Liverpool. I'm going back to, they lost the Champions League final to Real Madrid in Kiev. They then won the Champions League title against Spurs in Madrid. Then they followed it up with the Premier League title in lockdown. They had real difficulties the following season because they suffered defensive injuries. Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Joel Matip, even Jordan Henderson. They went into the market finally at the end of January and bought in Ozan Kabak and Ben Davies. It didn't quite work out. Manchester City reclaimed their title. Liverpool invested in Ibrahima Konate. They came back strong. They bought in Thiago Alcantara to provide some creativity in midfield. They never really replaced Gini Wijnaldum, but then they regenerate again with Luis Diaz, Darwin Núñez. Mo Salah signs a new contract, but Sadio Mane leaves. That's just the playing movement. So really sort of turbulent time, but he's managed to remain successful and competitive throughout that. Remember, a man who lifted Liverpool from a really tough period under Hicks and Gillette, their previous ownership. The new ownership came in, didn't start so well, but then it just clicked from his arrival in 2015 or whatever it was, October, I seem to recall. But there's also been a lot of change off the pitch as well. Just recently, these injuries have really started to accumulate, and that has troubled Liverpool clearly, whether it was to do with that or completely other reasons. Their doctor, Jim Moxon, left. You've seen Jurgen touching upon, the injuries that have afflicted his team when he's spoken in the press. You're fighting consistently this Goliath in Manchester City. And you've got the likes of Chelsea pushing harder, United investing, new manager, Tottenham and Arsenal trying to be competitive as well. And Liverpool don't have the level of investment of a Manchester City, perhaps of a Manchester United, of a Chelsea when it comes to recruitment. They seem to generate money, like in the case of Felipe Coutinho, and then reinvest it really wisely with Alisson, Virgil van Dijk. But it's not just this all-out spending. And that's been quite a significant talking point among Liverpool fans toward Fenway Sports Group, the ownership. And even Jurgen Klopp at the end of the transfer window just gone sort of indicated he would like a few more risks taken in the market. They ended up bringing in Arthur Melo on deadline day, a loan signing. Make of that what you will. He's a player that Arsenal went for previously. They didn't go for him despite being offered him in the window just gone. And that didn't really strike me as a Liverpool-like deal, but let's see and give it a fair chance. He's also an international player of high caliber, so I don't want to write it off. They pulled out some fantastic bits of recruitment. Diogo Jota coming out of the blue from Wolves that window as well. And what I'm trying to explain here is that they've got an amazing recruitment setup. And when we come to answer your question about can they do it again and regenerate, you look to that environment. Firstly, they've got a wonderful new training ground. They've got brilliant people filling it in various different departments, from scouting, recruitment, data analytics, sports science. You've got Jurgen Klopp and his staff, who only just signed that new contract in spring of this year. And you mentioned previous clubs. It was at Mainz and Dortmund and now Liverpool. It's not a massive sample size for how long he can be at one club and regenerate. Maybe a more accurate barometer was somebody like Pep Guardiola, who had, short stints, relatively speaking, where he was. And then we assumed the same would be true of Manchester City, but he has defied that and gone on longer. There's a new contract, it seems, waiting to be signed that hasn't been signed for Pep Guardiola yet, but wouldn't massively shock you if he did sign that. So maybe the Premier League is different. Maybe the setups at these clubs and the way they back these top level managers makes them want to stay. The environment, the league, they can't get any better really than the Premier League. Living in this country, and they all seem relatively happy. So yeah, I think Jurgen can go again, Jurgen Klopp. I think it's not without its issues. He's not without his faults. Liverpool have had quite a bit of change, but we're talking fine margins here. This is when there was a suggestion after Thomas Tuchel was sacked at Chelsea and Liverpool were having a bit of a bad spell, and a question was put to Jurgen Klopp, do you think the same fate will befall you? And I just thought, no chance. And he pointed out the ownership who act in a different way to how Chelsea have. I know Chelsea have had a change of ownership and already one change under this new regime. But Liverpool, FSG, John Henry, Tom Werner, Mike Gordon, they're squarely behind Jurgen Klopp. He's the best thing that could have happened to them and Liverpool. And then you've got Billy Hogan as chief executive, full backing to Jurgen Klopp. He has the power and authority. They've got a new sporting director now there in Julian Ward, who's taken over from Michael Edwards, having been his deputy before, and he'll work closely. The recruitment team of Barry Hunter and Dave Fallows, and on the data side, Ian Graham and various other people who I'm sure I'm not mentioning. So that setup is monumental, and it's all built around Jurgen Klopp. And I think he's going to keep Liverpool competitive, even when the pressure's on. Just recently, for example, they pull it out the bag in a really important Champions League game this week against Ajax, who had been in form. And they even in the last minute, they show that they're all behind Klopp. The players are with him. The fans are on board. They adore him. He's a legend in their history. And I see Jurgen Klopp being there for a long time to come. I hope these aren't famous last words.
Okay, so I want to move it on to Todd Boehly, who had a very important talk. He was doing some sort of talk. I haven't actually seen the full video yet, which I would love to. Seems like interesting topics. They were talking about the difference between, owning a franchise in the States and in the UK, and, the difference between running a team in the Premier League. I thought it was so interesting. Absolutely loved that stuff. He then went on to speak about all-star games. Saying that it would be a fantastic way to fund the pyramid, North versus South. Now, for me, I'm like, get in there straight away. Yes, I would love to see it. I've always wanted to see it. I love how they do it in the States. Jurgen Klopp, though, did reply saying, great, when you can find the space in the football calendar as it is, let's get it done. Because what Mr. Todd Boehly forgets is that in America they have like 4 months off, and they're happy to do this kind of stuff. But we've got Nations League, internationals at the end of the season. It feels like there's no break pre-season. It's all a lot. Do you think this will be happening? Was it just a suggestion from Todd Boehly, or are there actually talks of there being a North versus South all-star game?
Well, first and foremost, everyone needs to calm down. Ideas are allowed to be raised, and I'm on your side. I don't see any problem with putting that into the mix and having a chat about it and seeing if it could work. There's been a crazy reaction to it, much of it negative. He's a sports owner from a different country where they do this. He's come in to Premier League football. He's made a pretty good impression with all of the clubs who have dealt with him over potential transfers. Fellow executives who have met with him at the Premier League meetings. Everybody seems to speak quite highly of him. Of course, he will make mistakes and he'll learn along the way, whether it be in negotiating transfers or contracts or hiring or firing managers and plenty else besides. But he's rolling his sleeves up and he's getting involved with it. Yeah, they'll bring in sporting directors and chief executives and all these people behind the scenes to make sure that in future he can focus on being the co-owner and chairman rather than the acting sporting director as well. He said in that conference that you're referring to that their plan is to hire the best people. It's not rocket science, and he'll delegate to them and let them get on with their jobs. But at this point in time, they took over the club just before the transfer window. They needed to get down and dirty and crack on with it. And with the action comes words as well, ideas. And he's so quickly integrated within those Premier League circles and the meetings. And these American ownership groups who are either in the Premier League now or trying to get in now, there's reports that an American group are trying to buy Bournemouth. They see huge untapped potential still, believe it or not, in the Premier League in terms of where revenues could go. Broadcasting, commercial, merchandising, match day experience, tailgating, and the sort of things that you can enjoy, streaming of on-demand matches and clips, and so much more beyond my understanding when they look at the global audiences in North and South America, Asia, Australasia, Europe, Africa, and beyond. And so it doesn't surprise me that an idea like this, which has worked in the States, has come to the fore. But ideas are there to be debated. Many of them won't come to fruition. And yeah, for many of us as fans, it's actually quite an interesting concept. If you were to forget all of the schedule and the loyalty and the rivalries and the competition and the risk of injuries, then yeah, put them all together and let's have a match and let's raise loads of money, and it'll be quite a good spectacle that for all the cynical people who don't want to see it, loads of people would watch it as well. And that's part of democracy and life. But then we come back to the practicalities, and Jurgen Klopp quite rightly points out that there's no room in the schedule, as you said. Premier League, League Cup, FA Cup, Europa League, Champions League, Europa Conference League, Nations League. This winter we've got a World Cup. Then we'll have a Euros in not too long, and it just goes on like that. Okay, you could probably find a gap to play it in. So how do you pick the teams? Who's the managers? What happens to the clubs in the Midlands? Are they in the north or the south? Who carries the can if there are injuries? Because this isn't just like a charity game or something. We're proposing a serious game to raise massive revenues. But that comes with repercussions as well. Do they get paid? Do they not? Like, there are so many factors involved in this that it makes you think, like the 39th game, if you remember, that was raised by Richard Scudamore. They wanted to play one regular season game overseas. It got destroyed by the reaction. They've beefed up pre-season games overseas as a consequence. The European Super League that was proposed, and no sooner had it been proposed that it was falling apart in spring of last year. Or was it the year before? I can't remember exactly. So this is one of many ideas that we shouldn't be offended by. We shouldn't laugh. He's a vastly successful sports and business entrepreneur, and whether it comes to fruition or not, I don't think we need to get as sort of fractious about it as some of the reaction has been so far. Do I see it coming to fruition? Probably not. But in England, Joel, we just don't like change. People don't like new ideas. We like the old, the way things have always been. And sometimes some of these things open our eyes. And when they actually come about, they're quite successful. The idea that the Premier League would break away in 1992 would have been like blasphemous. It would have been like sacrilege, and you can read books on it, like I think it's The Game, where the ripples that this caused and the friction across English football was mental. But it happened, and now many people love the Premier League. So and if nothing else, it's got people like us talking, and so maybe that was part of Todd Boehly's aim.
Listen, you have been brilliant, and we look forward to speaking to you again in a few days. Okay, guys, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Joel Beya, David Ornstein, and we will be back. Peace.
I'm happy to say that I think it was the wrong decision to get rid of Tuchel. I think he connected with the Chelsea fans. He won trophies. He's in a difficult period, that's for sure. Do you know what I mean? But I think that getting rid of him, there's no good way to get rid of a manager. So I'm not really buying to like how it was handled. Like, for whatever decision, I think that was wrong.